الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد كمثل غيث أعجب الكفار نباته ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم يكون حطاما وفي الآخرة عذاب شديد ومغفرة من الله ورضوان وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور صدق الله العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. My dear respected brothers, sisters, and elders, we have our own definitions of success, what we think our goal should be in life. We may think that if we achieve a certain amount of status, we are successful. If we achieve a certain bank balance, we are successful. If we get this degree, we are successful. While these goals and these definitions of success, they may be well and good, but the Qur'an's definition of success is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ زُحْزِهَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ فَقَدْ فَازَ. whoever was saved from the fire and he was entered into Jannah, faqad faz, verily this person has achieved success. This person is successful. That's the definition of success the Quran poses for us. And to further elucidate this, we have the verse of the Quran that was just recited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about the insignificance of this life. He says, "I'lamu, you should all know, أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب وله." This world is just play and amusement, وزينة, and it's a show of beauty, وتفاخر بينكم, and it's an exchange of boastful claims between you, وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد, and it's a competition on an increase in wealth and children. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains it through an example. He says, كَمَثَلِ غَيْثٍ أَعْجَبَ الْكُفَّارَ نَبَاتُهُ. He said it's like the rain, when the rain causes the crops to come out and you see them all green. And the non-Muslims, they look at it and they enjoy it and they say, look at this, it's so green, it's so lush. ثُمَّ يَهِيجُ فَتَرَاهُ مُصْفَرًّا ثُمَّ يَكُونُ حُطَامًا. Then you see these plants, they turn yellow. ثُمَّ يَكُونُ حُطَامًا. Then they turn into straw, they turn into dust. And وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرِضْوَانٌ. He's saying this world is temporary. It may be lush, it may be green for a while, and then it'll dry out, it'll turn yellow, and that's it, it's gone. And so he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is shifting our attention. He is saying the main life is the next life. This life is just a means to get to the next life. And then he says, in the hereafter, it'll either be a punishment or you'll be forgiven from your Lord and you will have His blessing, ridwan, His pleasure. So if you do good in this world, you will get His pleasure and His forgiveness, and if you do bad, you will get adhabun shadid, a punishment. And then he sums it up, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. This worldly life is nothing but a material of delusion. It's just an illusion. It's delusion that we think that, can the brothers please come forward to make some room? He says this life is nothing but a delusion. We think that this is the real life. If we get success in this life, that's the real success. But Allah is saying this is just a delusion. The real life is the afterlife. And it's further elucidated through the hadith of Tirmidhi. ألا إن الدنيا ملعونة ملعون ما فيها إلا ذكر الله وما والاه وعالم أو متعلم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, or Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, that this dunya, there's no barakah, there's no blessing in it. And nothing within that dunya has blessing in it either, except the remembrance of Allah, those things that lead to the remembrance of Allah, and a scholar and a student. This hadith, it tells us of the significance of knowledge in Islam, how significant it is for Muslims to have the knowledge of their religion. And so we should all strive to learn more and more every day. Every single day we should learn something new about Islam. And there's no age limit on how old or how young someone has to be to learn the religion. In the Indian subcontinent, there's a course that's taught to scholars, Dars-e-Nizami it's called. And it's a 6-year, 8-year course. They teach you books on aqaid, on tafsir, on hadith, on all of these things. And in the last year, they do the 6 major hadith books. And there are people that I've met, they say there's a group of students, 40 to 55 years old. 40 to 55 years old. These guys are professionals in engineering and law, and they are doctors. But 10, 15 years ago, they said, you know what, we're going to give up our weekends, and we're going to 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours a day on the weekends, we're going to set aside and we're going to study this deen. And that 6 to 8 year course, it usually takes 6 to 8 years if you're doing it full time. But it took them 10, 15 years. But they had that commitment and they did it. And so I asked one of them one time that, why now? You're 45, 50 years old, your hair is white, you have one foot in the grave, why now? And so he said, if Allah asked me on the day of judgment that, look, you went to the best universities, you got the best degrees, you're the top person in your field, in engineering and science and whatever it may be, what was wrong with my religion? What was so bad about the knowledge of Islam that you didn't go out of your way to learn the knowledge of Islam? And he said, I don't have an answer to that. And so he said, I went out and I made time in my day. He made that sacrifice. His family made that sacrifice. And he went out and he studied the religion. And he went out and he did this entire course. Instead of 6 years, it took him 15 years. But he did it. and he's in his last year right now. That group of students, the 5 or 6 students, they're in their last year right now, and they will be completed this year, inshallah. So there's no age limit on when we can, on when what age there is that we should be able to learning religion at that age. And when we do go out and learn, we should always learn that which is authentic, which has been checked by the experts in the field. And if you want to relay anything about Islam, it has to be checked out. Nothing, no hearsay. And 2 of my teachers, they have told me this story. They said that there was a person that came to them and they said, you know, the September 11th attack in the United States, it was mentioned in the Quran. The Quran predicted these attacks. And he says, how is that? How did the Quran predict these attacks? He says, look, in Surah Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about non-Muslims dying. He said, yes, that's true. And he says, Surah Tawbah is what number surah? He says, Surah number 9. He says, what juz is it in? He says, juz number 11. So he said, there you go, 9/11. So this is hearsay. There's no grounding of these facts. It's just someone put it together and thought it makes sense. So we should find qualified sources and we should find qualified teachers. How do we know a teacher is qualified? Imam Shatibi, rahmatullah alayh, he wrote a book, Al-Muwafaqat fi Usul al-Sharia. He tries to outline the thought process of a mujtahid, how fiqh operates. And he says there are 3 things to look for in a teacher. Number 1, that teacher practices what he preaches. Number 2, that person was nourished and nurtured by people who were qualified, by scholars. And he trusted his teachers. And he gives the example of Umar radiallahu an. Umar radiallahu an, he, at the time of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, there was a treaty Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam signed, and it was very harsh against the Muslims. It didn't seem to Umar radiallahu anh like a fair deal for the Muslims. And Umar radiallahu anh told him, this is a hadith of Bukhari, he told him, أَلَسْنَا عَلَى الْحَقِّ وَهُمْ عَلَى بَاطِلٍ, aren't we on the right path and they are on the deviated path? And he said, aren't our dead in Jannah and they're dead in the hellfire? Prophet said, of course, that's true. And he says, then why are we being so lenient? Why are we giving away so many rights? Prophet Muhammad said, Yabna al-Khattab, O son of Khattab, inni Rasulullah. I am the messenger of Allah. وَلَن يُذَيِّعَنِ اللَّهُ أَبَدًا. Allah will never waste my efforts. And then Surah Fath was revealed, and the hadith ends with, فَطَابَتْ نَفْسُهُ وَرَجَعَ. Umar radiallahu anh calmed down, and he agreed with what the Prophet said. Umar radiallahu anh, he was nurtured by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's a second quality in a qualified teacher, that person is nurtured and nourished by qualified scholars. And the third, and perhaps the most important quality, is that person has respect for his teachers. And Imam Shatibi rahmatullah alayhi says all the Sahaba, all the major scholars had this quality in them, but most of all was Imam Malik. Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, he was very well known for having respect for his teachers. He mentions an instance, he says, Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, when he used to study hadith, he had a long string with him, and every time the teacher narrated one hadith, he would tie a knot. So he was able to count how many ahadith were narrated, so he'll have a count. And he was the Ibn Shihab Zuhri rahmatullah alayhi, Ibn Shihab Zuhri. He was narrating a hadith, and he narrated 29 ahadith. Imam Malik had 29 knots, and Ibn Shihab Zuhri said, okay, that's it, that's all for today. That was 30 ahadith. And Imam Malik says, no, Shaykh, that wasn't 30, that was 29 ahadith. And Ibn Shihab Zuhri rahmatullah got mad at him. He said, what's wrong with these students today? They don't pay attention in class. Their memories are not as good as they used to be, and they come and challenge me. Imam Malik didn't say anything. He said, I'm sorry, and he walked away. A few days later, Ibn Shihab Zuhri, Imam Malik came to Ibn Shihab Zuhri, and he said, can you teach me some more ahadith? At that point, Ibn Shihab Zuhri taught him 40 ahadith, and he says, go and memorize them. A couple of minutes later, Imam Malik comes back. He said, I'm done. I memorized them all. And he recited them to him. And at that point, Ibn Shihab Zuhri, he said, this man, he's a container of knowledge. You can fill in whatever you want, and he absorbs all that knowledge. So these are the 3 qualities that we should have in a teacher, that Imam Shatibi said that these people are qualified to teach. And when we do find someone who has this ability, who has these qualities, how can we obtain their knowledge? There's 2 ways, mushafaha and mutala'a. Mushafaha means you sit face to face in front of that person and then you learn from him. Mutala'a means the books that person has written, you learn from those books. And it's much better to do it face to face, because there are certain books, certain texts that you simply can't understand alone, or it's very difficult to understand alone. But when you have a teacher in front of them, the teacher can tell you straight up, this is what it means. And when we were studying, there was a book, it's called Idhar al-Haq, it's about Christianity, it's in Arabic, and there was a word in that book, I couldn't figure out what it was. And I kept on thinking that word was burudastant. And I sat there for about 15 minutes and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I moved on. And then the next day I came back and I started trying to read it again, and I still couldn't read it. I couldn't figure out what this word means. So then I went to my teacher and I said, Sheikh, what does this word mean? And the Sheikh looks at me and he starts laughing. And he says, this is the word Protestant. In Arabic, it became Prudestant. So this is just a mundane example, but there are certain masail that you simply can't understand unless you have qualified teachers who've been through that rigorous process. And so we should all, he said, that's why the first way of learning face-to-face with a teacher, this is the better way to do it. Another reason why it's better to do face-to-face, that there are, when you're learning with a teacher, that teacher influences that student's thinking process. And there's a light that goes from the teacher inside the student. For example, Umar radiallahu anhu was taught by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Umar radiallahu anhu says, there are three things that I said these sentences and then Allah revealed the ayahs exactly what I had said. This is a hadith of Bukhari. He said, وَافَقْتُ رَبِّي فِي ثَلَاثٍ. He said, I told Prophet ﷺ we should make maqam Ibrahim a musalla. Allah revealed the ayah, وَاتَّخِذُوا مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ musalla. He said, I told Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that when people come and ask your wives questions, there are people who ask questions who are pious, and then there are people who are not so pious. So they should cover themselves. And so he said the ayah of hijab was revealed. And the third thing is, the wives of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they all gathered together against Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Asa rabbuhu in tallaqakunna in yubdilahu azwajan khayran minkun." Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he is much greater than you. If he divorces all of you and he gets new wives, it is not difficult for him or Allah. And these exact ayahs were revealed. So that light from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it came into Umar radiallahu anh, and he started thinking like the Prophet ﷺ would think. And his mizaj, his personality, his character became attuned with the character of the Sharia. And so we make dua to Allah that Allah enables us all to find teachers like this and to benefit from them. Wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. After Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Isa alayhi salam was taken into the skies, there was 500 years that there was no prophet, no messenger. And for 500 years, the world was in darkness. There was no one to guide them. And then after 500 years, when the light finally came to the world in the form of the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first message Allah sent to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Iqra, read. And today, we are as far from knowledge as one can be, compared to our elders and compared to the time of the Sahaba. And if we don't have proper, vetted, authentic knowledge, we will not be able to defend Islam when it's attacked academically. And without proper knowledge, our faiths are in danger. And so inshallah, we should all make an effort that we try and find qualified teachers, and just a couple hours a week we set aside in our lives that we're going to go and read so-and-so book, or we're going to go and study with so-and-so sheikh. And so we should all make that intention. And may Allah accept all of our intentions. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون واذكروا الله يذكركم ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وجل وأتم وأكبر أقيموا الصلاة